In the back of the book segment tonight, the U.S. presidential election and Britain's vote to leave the European Union. Immigration is taking center stage in the presidential campaign, and according to former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, the UK vote is no different.
The biggest concern was definitely immigration, and a whole lot of things get mixed up in this issue of immigration. And as you know from the US, but we can see it anywhere in Europe today, this issue to do with immigration has the power to move electorates in a very sharp and clear direction.
So is this a preview of what's coming in November? Joining us now to analyze from Cleveland, Rick Grinnell, former U.S. spokesman at the UN, and with us in studio, Scott Rasmussen, president of the Rasmussen Media Group. Scott, let's start with you. The numbers. Tony Blair points out that immigration was a big topic. It moves needles. It moved needles here early with Donald Trump. It's moving needles in the European Union. Is it come back here again?
Well, it is a big issue, but I think you have to understand part of the power comes because the political class doesn't want it to be an issue at all. They want to ignore legitimate concerns of voters and simply say, well, if you disagree with us on immigration, you're a racist. That's not the way you win people over. What's been happening is we have a political class here, and there was a similar situation in Europe where legitimate concerns were not being addressed. That gives rise to the leave vote, and it has given rise to Donald Trump here in the United States.
Hey, Rick, how did they miss this so badly? Everybody missed this one.
It was really unbelievable, Eric. I mean, across the board, I think, you know, the narrative and the meme from the media, even in Europe, I was in London last week, you hear this undertone of exactly what Scott said, racism. Right. And so I think what conservatives have to do is they have to do a better job of bifurcating immigration from illegal immigration. Donald Trump needs to make it very clear he's talking about illegal immigration, because that way I think the immigrants who want people to wait in line because they waited in line, they're going to be willing to hear that message and receive it better. I think to answer your question, what the media is trying to do is blur the two, because they're an advocacy organization. What we saw in Europe and what we see in the United States is they are pushing this narrative that somehow Donald Trump and his supporters hate all immigration.
And that's not true. Don't we blur it too also, Rick? Don't we blur it when we say immigration can lead to a less safe homeland? Too much immigration could open up homegrown terrorism.
Well, I hope we don't.
Radicalize Americans even. Don't we do that?
I hope we don't, and I certainly try to make sure that whenever I'm talking about these concerns that we have, that we're talking about policy fixes. So, for instance, when we do have immigrants coming here, because we absolutely must have immigrants because our birth rate is not up enough, when we do have immigrants, we have to make sure that we screen them. I don't think it's too much to say, let's take a pause because we don't have proper information coming from Syria, for instance. Taking a pause is not a radical position. The State Department should have thought of that a long time ago, but our State Department is not engaged in Syria or on the immigration issue, as evident by the 51 career diplomats who threw up their hands and said, this policy isn't working, we got to do something different.
Hang in there, Rick. Scott, here's my question. So, exit polling throughout the primary, the economy has always been #1 issue in Americans' minds.
Which is impacted by immigration.
Safety has been #2.
Right.
Has this now pushed immigration topic towards the top of the list of Americans' concerns?
Immigration is part of a whole bundle of concerns, and I think the biggest concern is that they don't think anybody's listening. If you go to what we used to call the Rust Belt, they don't think that anybody in either party really cares about them. And the other issue here is people believe that they can solve problems for themselves. They understand why an immigrant would want to come to America, bring their family here, raise them here. They understand why there are legitimate concerns, so let's find a way to solve it. But when you send the problems to Washington or Brussels, they don't get solved.
How is it not the same issue when Great Britain says we want out of the European Union, we want sovereignty, we want our borders sovereign, and Donald Trump says, I want to build a wall on the southern border? Isn't it the same thing?
They're related issues. Building a wall is not necessarily the best message you want to send. Maybe if you were to say we want to enforce laws and take away federal funding from sanctuary cities, that's maybe a different way of approaching it. I think both sides are missing the fact that this is a complex issue. It's not just how do you get into the country, what happens after you get here? How do you live? How do you assimilate into society? That's where the real challenges are. And look, let's be clear about this. What happened yesterday is not changing anything. It is confirming a change that already took place. The attitudes towards Europe changed long before this vote.
Rich, I got less than a minute, 30 seconds or so. Do you agree with Scott that things are still the same? It's just a matter of a border?
No, I don't. I think, look, we got 28 countries in the European Union. It's been the lowest common denominator of policy. The Brits have always tried to raise the level. They've been the one bringing it up. With them gone, the EU policy becomes even more watered down. Right. Great Britain is going to be stronger. I think we're going to have a great NATO ally because now they have to rely on NATO for their security.
And I have to leave it right there. Scott and Richard, thank you very much.